Hello everyone! Betrayal never arrives with loud words or explosive emotions. It creeps in slowly, silently, almost invisibly. It hides in the pauses between sentences, in glances that no longer search for yours, in touches that grow colder by the day. At first, you justify everything: exhaustion, stress, the routine of daily life. But eventually, a moment comes when you realize you no longer exist in her world. And yet, you're still standing there, holding the shattered pieces of something you once called love. But let's start from the beginning. My name is Bennett, and I live in New York City, the city that truly never sleeps, where the lights shine endlessly and life rushes forward relentlessly. From the outside, my life probably looks perfect to most people. I've got a steady job, a loving family, and an incredible wife whom I've adored for 15 years. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine that one day I'd face a reality so harsh and unbelievable. It was late afternoon when the sun started slipping through the window blinds. I sat alone in the kitchen, holding a cup of cold coffee and gazing out thoughtfully. The streetlights flickered to life, but a darkness weighed heavily on my heart. Recently, I've noticed myself drifting apart from Natalie. She's been returning home later, our nights out together have become rare, and the conversations between us shorter, as if some invisible force was quietly pulling us apart. I'm typically not much of a talker and usually bury myself in work, but these changes were impossible to ignore. Each evening, I'd wait patiently for Natalie, only to watch her brush right past me, treating me as if I were merely part of the furniture. I didn't hold it against her. I understood how draining work could be, but something about this situation felt terribly off. I couldn't put my finger on exactly what it was until the painful truth hit me, stark and undeniable. That night, Natalie came home. She walked in silently, immediately beginning to undress without acknowledging my presence, as though I didn't exist. I remained quiet, but an uneasy feeling churned deep within me. Today, however, I had finally decided not to ignore that feeling anymore. The inexplicable emptiness I'd been carrying around inside became sharply clear. I couldn't remain silent any longer. I placed my coffee cup down gently on the table, my heart feeling as heavy as stone. "Natalie," I called to her, my voice calm yet firm. She stopped, turned slowly, and looked at me without any surprise, as if we had never been close enough to truly care about each other's feelings. "What's going on?" she asked, her eyes indifferent. I fought to keep my tone even, refusing to let my emotions completely surface, even though this was precisely the question I'd avoided confronting. "I know you're cheating on me," I said plainly, not with anger but with painful certainty. "And I'm guessing it's been happening for quite a while." Natalie's eyes widened slightly, a forced smile briefly appeared on her lips, but it wasn't relief. It was the anxious smile of someone terrified at being discovered. "You're bringing this up again," she sighed lightly, trying to brush away my accusation. "Ethan, you know how demanding my job is. What's gotten into you? Can't you accept that I occasionally have important meetings?" I shook my head slowly but stayed quiet for a moment. Natalie had never truly understood what was going on inside me. "You keep saying that I can't accept it, but that's not what bothers me," I replied steadily, even as my eyes gave away my deep disappointment. "You come home late, claiming vague work trips. I'm not stupid, Natalie, I know you've been lying to me." She stood quietly, saying nothing, not even looking angry. She simply stared at me with a weary expression, like she'd grown tired of hearing my suspicions. "Why can't you understand, Ethan? I have needs. Are you saying I'm not enough as your husband?" I clenched my jaw tightly, fighting the surge of emotion. "Am I just some emotionless machine incapable of fulfilling you?" She pressed her lips together and hesitated before snapping back sharply. "That's not what I'm saying, but you just don't understand my needs. Things haven't been right between us for a long time." Her words hit me deeply, cutting through me. Yet, instead of anger, I felt a hollow emptiness. Her justifications couldn't erase the sting of betrayal. Slowly, I stood and moved closer. "I don't care about your actions," I said, my voice low and steady. "But what I can't tolerate anymore are the lies and being treated like I'm worthless." She remained silent, but her demeanor changed noticeably. Gone was the earlier arrogance and calm. Now, hesitation and fear filled her eyes, as if she'd realized there was nothing left to fix. After a prolonged silence, she spoke weakly. "Can't you forgive me?" she asked quietly. My heart ached as I stared at her. But forgiveness was beyond me. She had done far too much damage. "No, Natalie," I replied firmly. "You can't keep hurting me and still expect forgiveness. You chose your path, now I'll choose mine." She stood frozen in the living room, her eyes wide with anxiety. My words were more than just a confrontation, they signaled an unavoidable ending. I was no longer willing to be the quiet, forgiving man she'd taken for granted. She moved slightly, approaching cautiously but not daring to meet my eyes. My anger remained, but the desperation I once felt had diminished. I knew she would try to justify herself, but I didn't want to hear any more excuses. Kindness, patience, unconditional forgiveness, those belong to the past now. I'm so tired, I admitted softly. I'm exhausted from standing outside your life, watching you live freely while I'm not even part of my own existence anymore. Natalie said nothing, her eyes glistening with tears. Regret shone clearly in her gaze, but was it too late? I refused to allow her more chances to rationalize her actions. Do you have any idea how I feel? I demanded, stepping even closer and holding her gaze steadily. Do you think it doesn't affect me when I watch you go out with other men while I suffer in silence? I'm supposed to be your husband, yet I'm treated without an ounce of respect. Natalie swallowed hard and turned away briefly, searching desperately for words that could mend this broken moment. But there was nothing left to say. Hurts, doesn't it? I continued, bitterness saturating my voice. I've tolerated everything, I've been endlessly patient, but what about you? You haven't shown me any respect. You treat me as if I'm disposable. Natalie turned back to me, tears spilling down her cheeks. I don't know what else to say, she stammered, her voice shaking. I was wrong, but Ethan, I need you. I don't even understand what I've done. I stared at her, unable to grant easy forgiveness. You say you need me, but your actions tell me otherwise. Clearly, your real needs lie elsewhere. You need things I can't offer anymore, that's why you turn to others, I said sharply, watching Natalie take a small step backward, each word landing like a blow. She struggled to respond, stammering slightly. You don't understand. I don't love any of them, she confessed, her eyes filled with a deep sadness. I just couldn't handle being lonely anymore. You weren't there, Ethan. You're no longer the man I can share my life with, you changed. I moved closer, my expression hardening, though deep within, disappointment crushed my heart. I changed. I echoed, my voice trembling slightly. Don't you see it? You were the one who changed first, the moment you stopped seeing me as your partner and began treating me like I was nothing. Natalie lowered her head, unable to argue anymore. She knew she was at fault, but could apologies fix the deep wounds she'd caused? I know you loved me once, I admitted painfully, but not enough to stop lying to me. Not enough to look at me without indifference. Not enough to respect me. She broke down, sobbing openly, unable to maintain the facade she'd hidden behind. I'm sorry, Ethan, she cried softly. I never meant to hurt you. I don't even understand why I did it. An unbearable silence settled between us. Watching her, I saw vulnerability and helplessness, but not pity. I'd endured too much to offer another chance now. Sorry isn't enough anymore, I stated firmly, standing my ground. What matters now is the damage you've done to us. I won't allow your lies to continue. She stepped closer again, her eyes pleading desperately, but I no longer had patience for her weakness. The marriage we built had lost all respect, and I couldn't remain in it. I can't live with you anymore, Natalie, I said bluntly. There's nothing left for us to fix. I've made up my mind. Natalie sank onto the couch, crying uncontrollably, no longer defending herself. There were no excuses left. But I couldn't forgive the betrayal, it was far too late. When Natalie finally left, I didn't feel empty inside. Instead, it felt like our relationship had ended long ago and now I had a chance at a fresh start. I promised myself I'd find joy again, embracing things I'd once given up because of her. With every passing day, strength returned to me, freeing me from the shadow of her betrayal. Natalie was no longer a significant part of my life. I was alone, yet stronger, healing from wounds that once seemed permanent. The house became eerily quiet after she left. Every corner we once shared now felt empty and cold, yet strangely, I didn't feel a void. Instead, a calmness settled within me. Part of me felt relief at finally stepping out of her shadow, but another, darker part still harbored resentment from her betrayal. I'd always been quiet, patient, never seeking revenge, but this time, simply letting go wasn't enough. I needed Natalie to understand fully the gravity of what she'd done. From that day, I carefully began forming a plan, not for revenge, but to make her truly grasp the depth of her betrayal. I gathered evidence meticulously, messages, calls, secret meetings, all stored carefully. One part of me wanted her to face the truth, another quietly yearned for her to feel the pain I'd felt for so long. I began following her discreetly, tracking every move she made. Natalie continued her life, meeting other men, unaware of my watchful presence. I knew everything about Connor, about Travis, and all her other indiscretions. Oddly, instead of anger, I felt a calm detachment. The pain no longer controlled me. I had everything necessary, evidence, patience, and the resolve to confront her betrayal. One evening, as Natalie left to meet someone, I decided to set my plan in motion. Following secretly, I knew exactly where she'd be and what she'd do. Watching from afar felt surreal, like observing a play unfold, but beneath it lay a strange sense of anticipation. I wouldn't forget her actions, but I wouldn't remain trapped in bitterness or jealousy anymore. When Natalie returned home late that night, I was already prepared. I'd been sitting quietly in the darkness, waiting patiently to finally address everything I'd avoided for too long. The door opened slowly and she walked in, completely unaware that I was there. As soon as she saw me standing in the shadows, her eyes widened with shock and a flicker of fear. "Ethan," she murmured nervously, her voice shaking slightly. I didn't expect you'd be home already." "Home early?" I repeated, my voice cold and controlled. "I know exactly where you've been, Natalie. I know everything you've been up to. Did you honestly think I wouldn't find out?" Natalie stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing as if trying to find the right words. But I wasn't interested in her excuses. I already had everything laid out clearly. "Connor, right?" I continued calmly. "Or perhaps Travis. And what about the others you've been meeting? Did you really believe I'd remain clueless forever?" She remained speechless, tears welling up and falling silently down her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she finally choked out, barely audible. "I don't even know what to say. Yes, I was wrong, horribly wrong, but please, Ethan, don't let this end everything. I still love you." "Love?" I scoffed bitterly, shaking my head. "You call this love, Natalie? Sleeping around with other men and treating me like I'm worthless, unable to satisfy you or fulfill your needs." Natalie moved forward slightly, desperation clear in her pleading eyes. But I had reached my limit. Her apologies meant nothing anymore. "You can't lie your way out of this anymore," I said firmly, my voice colder than ever. "I've endured enough, and now it's time for you to face the truth." Without waiting for her response, I opened my laptop and played a video compilation I had meticulously prepared. Natalie's face fell as she watched undeniable proof of her betrayal play before her, the secret meetings, intimate embraces, passionate kisses, all clearly documented. "You thought you'd never get caught," I said calmly, watching her reaction closely. "This is the consequence of your actions, not just for you, but also for the men you brought into your life." Natalie's shoulders shook as she silently wept, completely overwhelmed. But despite her tears, I felt nothing but a profound sense of emptiness and determination. I had suffered enough. Now it was her turn to feel the gravity of what she had done. "Forgiveness isn't an option anymore," I stated softly but with unyielding resolve. "You crossed lines I never thought possible. You've pushed it too far, Natalie." "I know," she whispered weakly. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I messed up everything. But please, remember I still love you." "Words aren't enough, Natalie," I replied, my voice filled with sadness but clear conviction. "Your actions have spoken louder than anything you could ever say now." She stepped back, visibly shaken by my words. For a moment, she looked as if she might speak, but nothing came out. We stood there silently, an insurmountable gap between us, impossible to bridge. When Natalie finally left, I felt strangely calm. It was as if our marriage had ended long ago, and now I was finally free to rebuild my life. I spent the following days focusing on myself, clearing my mind of negativity and pain, slowly rediscovering who I was without her. Natalie called one evening, hesitant and uncertain. I debated answering, but finally picked up. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Ethan, I know I've caused you so much pain, but I genuinely love you. I'll do anything to fix this." "I can't forgive you, Natalie," I replied gently yet firmly. "Not because my feelings are gone, but because I can't continue living in the lie you've created. My decision is final." After a prolonged silence, she finally responded quietly, "I understand. Just please know that despite everything, I truly do love you." I didn't reply, there was nothing left to say. Natalie had finally understood the irreversible nature of her mistakes. In the days after her departure, I began rebuilding my life. I revisited favorite cafes, dove back into neglected work projects, and reconnected with old friends I'd lost along the way. Gradually, the pain and anger I'd carried were replaced by peace and newfound strength. I started exploring new interests, attending yoga classes, going out more often, and reconnecting with my authentic self. Slowly, Natalie faded from my everyday thoughts, her betrayal becoming merely a distant memory. Eventually, I found freedom in acceptance, no longer chained to resentment or grief. My life wasn't perfect, but it was authentic and peaceful. I learned that revenge or bitterness would not grant me true liberation. Instead, I chose a path of self-respect and personal fulfillment, stepping confidently into a future free of betrayal, stronger and wiser than ever before.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to the channel.